Hello, everybody. Welcome to this special bear market edition of the Foxenomics call. Quick reminder, I don't typically do slide decks because I feel like everybody's seen enough slide decks in their life. However, this week is an exception. So please open the Zoom link. I will be showing the deck on Zoom. So yeah, I'm glad we're doing this today because, when the market sells off and things are chaotic and you have projects potentially melting down, and it kind of feels like you're in the middle of a movie and there's explosions all around you, and it's stressful. You may be losing some of your personal wealth. There's a sense that crypto itself is under attack, and of course crypto's critics love to take advantage of pullbacks in price and use that as supposed evidence that the whole industry is a scam or whatever. There's a lot of bullshit that flies around during times like this, and psychologically it's just tough, and it's like for those of us working in a DAO like here at ShapeShift, it's so important to just keep in mind that this is temporary, and bear markets are an orderly and predictable and arguably even healthy aspect of crypto. We've seen it over and over again. We truly are going to make it. So the good news is, we've seen this coming for a while. We've planned for this eventuality. We aren't in as ideal of a position as I would hope, but in crypto, you rarely get exactly what you want. But today we're going to delve into kind of where we're at and what our options are in light of this burgeoning bear market. The future has never been brighter for ShapeShift. I think we're well positioned in an industry that's about to go truly mainstream within a few years. We have Fox Chain that's going to provide a unique and invaluable service to crypto, something that no other organization can offer. We have this wonderful interface. We're doing great things on the DeFi side of things. So, it's just a matter of getting through this tough period. And remember that the DAO is not going anywhere, but we can quantify that. So, a couple more things. After this, we'll be talking about a few other issues as well. Or talking points. We have Lindsay from Hedgie was going to be talking about NFTs related to Fox sales. And then also Marley was going to discuss what to do with our UST. But first and foremost, we'll jump into this presentation. Wow, my first slide deck in quite a while here. I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me, folks. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Okay, thanks, Diggy. Cool. Let's jump right into it here.
Kent?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Sometimes you're sharing your whole desktop, but there we go. Now we just see the state of the treasury slide.
Perfect. Okay. I hope nobody saw my my list of Ripple related positions in my Tron positions. Anyway, so let's jump in here. So in the scheme of things, and again, it's really important to quantify this stuff. But in the scheme of things, the DAO is actually in a pretty good position, and in my opinion, our treasury is currently valued around 75 million total. So this number you will not find on Etherscan or Zapper. This is a more holistic view that includes all of our positioning throughout DeFi, in terms of Olympus, the Ichi ecosystem, our treasury, everything. This is owing to the amazing work of Darwin, who really jumped in and in a very granular fashion put this all together. Great assist from that on Seth and some other contributors. So, this is part of our dashboard. This was updated as of, I believe, just a few hours ago. So very up to date. So at a very high level here, we see, of course, most of our value is in Fox. We also have one Fox collateral. Crypto encompasses a lot of the other positions we have in DeFi, as well as, we have some other sort of random crypto, not really random, but things we've earned over time, like our tribe rewards. We have some wrapped ETH from our bonds and everything. So, at a glance, you can see we certainly have a good-sized treasury here. Of course, the astute amongst us will note that Fox is highly volatile, and this treasury used to be a lot bigger when Fox was at $1, and also Fox could drop much further in a bear market, which is precisely the point of this discussion. By the way, so as I move through this, I'm just going to be working off the deck. I don't have the stage chat open. If you could I kind of designed this to just run through these ideas, and then once I'm done, I'll stop sharing. We can all just jump into the topics. So if you have any questions or thoughts, just please save them for afterwards. So how are we doing in terms of the all-important runway? Factoring in the May payroll that will be going out soon, we have a little over $5.3 million, 5.36-ish to be precise. That consists of mostly USDC and then around 200K of UST. And that's at the current peg. I think it's actually, we have more like 220,000 UST. This is one of those crazy open questions sometimes in crypto where you see something that could go either way. I feel like it's very granular. Either that UST may wind up at like, just a fraction of that, or it could regain its peg. I personally am still somehow, I don't want to say bullish, but I'm holding some Luna myself. I think it's going to work out over the long run, but that's the big caveat. Although 200K, of course, is not going to make or break anything. So moving along to the monthly spend, this is, obviously one of the key variables in terms of our runway. This month we're paying out 532,000 in USDC alongside a smaller amount of Fox. This is lower than last month owing to a deferred Fox chain payment primarily. In other words, Fox chain it did not elect to receive payment this month. This looks to be like a fairly stable figure moving forward. So given our current holdings and the current runway, that gives us about 10 months. This is short of our goal that we've had in tokenomics for quite a while of 18 months.
Hey,
previously. Yes, Josh.
Ken, I just want to point out that this assumes no revenue, right?
Correct. Great point. That brings me to the next slide. So yes, I'm arguing that we shouldn't really, as we're projecting our runway, I'm arguing that we should kind of leave revenue out of the picture and kind of like see that as a nice, something we can factor in, a nice bonus if we're getting it. But for a more conservative, worst case scenario approach, I'm assuming revenue is minimal. And the reason is the fact that most of our revenue comes from crypto, which is highly correlated with Fox and with the overall market. So just looking at where revenue comes from, in April we generated 244K. 78% of that came from our token rewards. In May we've already earned 74K, and this is pretty impressive because token is already, as you can see from the chart, it's down substantially from what it was. But the rub here, of course, is that if what we're earning, and we are earning some additional revenue in a UST, which that might be its own can of worms. But this crypto that we're earning rewards in is highly likely to continue going down as well in a bear market. How much more, I'm not sure. So I feel like, this is certainly something to keep in mind, the fact that we also have revenue, but what I'm presenting here is sort of just like, in terms of the runway, is kind of like, okay, this is assuming that revenue will drop to sort of minimal levels, and we really need to count on having alternatives, having more stables in the treasury. Of course, that's just my opinion. That's open to interpretation. So what are the current challenges? So, as I mentioned, we're really only a little more than halfway towards our goal of having a 18-month runway. The revenues, as I just mentioned, it's denominated in asset. It's highly correlated with the broader crypto market. That's likely to remain the case for a while. It's also difficult just to sell Fox in a bear market in terms of longer vesting periods and larger amounts. We're arguably seeing this right now with Hedgie, where Hedgie is a fantastic platform, but right now, we're trying to sell $500,000 worth of Fox at an 18-month lockup, like a 7 or 8% discount. We may have to adjust that price lower, but it's, in a panicky bearish market like this, it's just generally difficult to sell in volume, or more difficult sometimes. And then lastly, our primary source of revenue thus far, Olympus Bonds, has dried up over the past 2 weeks. This is actually something we addressed in the TMDC call previously, and we are back to generating some revenue. We may be on the path to maybe making approximately 1.5 million a month, if that's sustainable. Hopefully it is, but this is actually just one tool in our toolbox. There may be other ways to generate revenue as well. But that's kind of the big picture in terms of, okay, what are we looking at? Against this backdrop, what can we do to put ourselves in a better financial position, namely extend our runway? So one option popped up over the weekend in the general chat via Foxenomics No Life. Just a really good thought. It's something that I think some of us were sort of pondering on a less detailed level, because it does make sense. But he or she did a great job of kind of spelling out the logic behind it. But basically, you can choose either Fox or USDC if you're a contributor. All things considered equal, it would be better for our runway if we're paying out in Fox. We have plenty of Fox. So, the idea is that we would provide a bonus to contributors taking Fox. One of the downsides potentially of issuing more Fox is, and one of the nice things about issuing stables is that's arguably or potentially more sell pressure on Fox, because people may choose to receive their Fox and immediately convert that to stables to pay bills or do something else with it. So an interesting way around that, or an interesting way to kind of compensate for that dynamic, is to accompany the bonus or the entire monthly payment with a lockup period that would reduce those near-term Fox emissions from people selling. Maybe that could be facilitated with a Sablier stream or some sort of streaming payment. This is, I think, I get the sense just from chatting in the Tokenomics channel, this seems to really have support. I personally really dig it. I don't think it's a magic bullet solution, but it's definitely I think something we should dig into more, and I think we can chat about it more today also. This one is never fun, but I'd be remiss if we didn't dig into it. Budget austerity. Bear markets require, unless you're sufficiently capitalized, they require austerity. So up to this point, we've really kind of added to the budget in a way that's more of a bull market sort of thing. Not by that I mean that the community in general probably hasn't taken too exacting of approach with respect to proposed workstream budgets, and just kind of thinking, okay, we're building this out, and funds haven't really been an issue. It was more of a bullish environment, but now we're unequivocally in a bear market, and this is okay. Sometimes you overshoot in a bull market. I think people can do this with personal spending. At centralized ShapeShift, we certainly wound up doing that. We spent more coming out of the ICO bubble and had to really pull back, and it was an adjustment. But it's something you do as as part of just the process of adapting to the market. So, and I want to preface this with I'm not recommending any particular budget reductions personally. This is of course up to workstream leaders. I'm just laying some things out. I also want to emphasize, there are no proposals to cut anybody's jobs or anything like that. We're just talking about, these potential scenarios. If we were to affect a monthly budget reduction of a little over 25%, that would give us an extra 3 months of runway, bringing us down from $550K a month to $400K. I'm adding in the keep key spend there as well per month. So this would give us roughly about 13 months just by doing that. Budget austerity, I think it also signals to the community and the broader community of Fox holders, like, hey, we are fiscally responsible. We're not just being like YOLO, like, what's the, I can't remember the analogy, but, partying balls while Rome burns. We're not going to do that. We're very reactive to what's happening. The idea here really is just to be mindful of what's happening. I'm going to say this though, in my opinion, I think that the DAO it would make sense for the DAO to sort of collectively, at least, put the brakes on this thing and say, okay, we're going to be very picky about adding more funds to our budget. At least let's stop growing the budget. That would be the first step. And again, I'm not calling out any particular proposed expense or anything like that, but it's time to get more fiscally conservative. Option number 3. So looking back on my time at the work stream so far since November, my primary regret is not pushing harder for a Fox sale on the open market when we were back when we got listed on Coinbase, when Fox was up towards $1. I really I feel like we could be in a better position if we would have done that. The argument against doing this is, there's kind of that idea of like, you look bad if you're a DAO dumping on the market. It's bad for optics and messaging. And this is certainly a valid argument. It's like, we've seen a lot of projects since the ICO days up to DeFi, and now with, NFT type platforms, the dumping on the plebes kind of thing is bad for messaging. My argument would be that that certainly happens sometimes, but I think our community at large would be understanding of our need to raise funds. This is something that DAOs need to do, and of course, selling Fox on the market can be done in a way that's gradual and isn't totally tanking price. So it's an important tool potentially at our disposal if other methods to acquire stablecoins prove to be insufficient. Again, I view this as kind of like maybe not the first option we would choose, but it's certainly something we should consider moving forward. And we were talking about this briefly during the TMDC call as well. So keeping that one in mind, convert one Fox and Angel Vault LP to USDC. So we have, I think, roughly about 2 million of funds that are sitting in the Ichi ecosystem. This is this is a lot of untapped potential in the event that we really need to pull those funds. One challenge, though, is that the reserves, as John pointed out the other day, USDC reserves are too low to make this an effective strategy at the moment. Of course, another reason it's a backup strategy, not something we would want to rely on immediately, is that it impacts our market positioning in terms of how we're basically the market on Uniswap with Angel Vault. But it's worth considering that this is something that potentially we could turn to in the future if we had to, presuming that the reserves were sufficient to redeem that. Again, I wouldn't put this at the top of the list though, for those reasons. Taking out more loans. This is a quick and proven way to add stables to our treasury. We've done it many times with Rari Fuse. It's worked out great. In terms of like allowing us to raise stables, not necessarily have to jump into or tap into like our existing stablecoin reserve. Of course, this is debt, which entails debt service payments. We've actually brought that down now to 10K a month, which is outstanding. It used to be a lot higher. I think 27K a week. And with the advent of Rari Turbo, which I think that got delayed due to the Rari hack or exploit, but it should be coming down the pike soon. This will give us better terms for loans. Namely, we'll be able to borrow FEI at a lower APR because we'll be able to add more liquidity to the pools. And then there's also a rev share 50-50 with Tribe, which should bring down our lending costs. So, another challenge, or I mentioned this already, but the debt service payments, that's over time that eats away at our budget. Another downside, of course, is liquidation risk. In this type of market, even being, you think you're being safe, but then my God, the market dumps again, so you're putting more in there. It's always a risk. Currently, our existing FAY loans, I think, are safe down to something like, it was 7 cents before we actually paid down some of that debt. So we're pretty safe right now, but that's always a concern, especially when things spiral downwards and you get a bad kind of a panic-driven sell-off. And then finally, there's the smart contract risk, and I think as amazing as Rari is, the recent hack was emblematic of the fact that, like, in DeFi, even projects that have a good Lindy effect going on can get exploited. There may be hidden attack vectors out there. It's just the name of the game. So of course that's always a risk as well. But this is always an option. One that's arguably less attractive as if Fox were to go lower and lower, just because it requires more Fox to collateralize those loans. But something to keep in mind. Fixed rate loans. So this is something that we're seeing new platforms emerge that address this related, this really broader need for DAOs to raise stablecoin capital. So recently we've heard a lot from Jordan from Porter Finance, and they've built this fixed rate loan product with DAOs specifically in mind. We heard from Sense Protocol as well. Sense is doing something similar with fixed rate. So, Porter is really aiming to expose users to zero liquidation risk. They've also been pre-approved via governance for the TMDC to make decisions around the positioning on that. Nothing too specific in that proposal, but certainly a good precondition for us taking part in that protocol and using it. Challenges here are Porter's not live yet. They're undergoing the audit process. They're moving towards production. But anytime you have a brand new platform, there's some execution risk, and just getting things started is a challenge. And related challenges, it's difficult to anticipate demand on this platform that hasn't generated any production data yet in terms of what people are doing. It's similar to kind of like what we're doing with Hedgie right now. It's kind of an experiment. We're trying to see what can get us demand for these proposals or these terms. But that said, I think experimenting with Porter when it's live is an outstanding idea and another good tool in our toolbox. So option number 6, just be happy with our current stable stack. So hypothetically, we already have enough runway, assuming we can cover our budgetary needs with new income or revenue every month. In other words, okay, we kind of have a cushion of $5 million, and let's say we're going to generate 600K of new stablecoin income every month via like our Olympus bonds or any of these means in a sustainable fashion. Sure, that is absolutely a viable approach. I would argue, though, that this is very risky because it assumes that we'll be able to generate that sufficient income every month. Market conditions change, especially in shitty markets when everything is dropping, demand can evaporate. It would be a mistake, for example, to assume that our current bond revenue will be sustainable into maybe like 3 or 6 months down the road. It's kind of a big unknown. We don't want to assume that. Again, the conservative approach here is to make the worst case assumptions. And the worst case assumptions is that there won't be a lot of demand for those types of things. Thus, it makes sense to focus on, just building out that stable stack, because if we reach the point where we have, the 10 million, then we can say, okay, come hell or high water, even if, going forward in 6 months or 8 months or whatever, there isn't demand for these things, and we can't, it's really hard to sell Fox in any fashion, to part with it via bonds or whatever. We have this stable stack at our disposal. Finally, the one thing that is absolutely not an option is hoping the market will recover. Just crossing our fingers and saying, "Well, fuck, man, God, it's gone down so much. It'll get better." This is definitely the path to financial ruin for the DAO if the market continues to be shitty. And I mean, I suspect it will. I hope I'm wrong. Maybe it'll turn around, but it could get far worse. So. Hopes and prayers is not an option here. We need to be proactive. So, kind of summing all that up, what I would recommend, and one other thing to add to this is the options I've listed. I think are things to consider, but they're certainly not all encompassing. I think the community will have other options as well. So that is not like the full picture. But whatever we do, I think we can employ a modular approach. This is a modular synthesizer I built recently where you take all these little parts and you put them together and they combine it to create this really cool thing that sounds awesome. So we should take a modular approach. I think none of these is a magic silver bullet that's going to, save us from the bear market and put us in a better position. We just need to be smart and put all these building blocks together in a way that makes sense. And maybe some of these building blocks will be mutually reinforcing. But if we take a real nice high-level strategic approach, we can do this. And again, I really do think we're going to make it. We're starting off in a fairly good position, and we have a lot of smart contributors to this DAO and to this work stream. And despite the current conditions, I'm very excited about the future of this DAO. So, wow, that was a nice, fun presentation. At this point, I've given you guys plenty to talk about here. I'd like to just invite anybody to come up on stage to chat about this. I was thinking it would really suck if somehow I got disconnected and I've been talking to myself for the past 30 minutes, but it looks like I'm still online. So yeah, what do you guys think? Come on down. Hey, John.
Hey, Ken. Thanks for laying all these potential options out. There was a really good discussion, I know, that fueled some of this conversation and the general chat over the weekend. And I think it's good that we're looking at all of this. I think my general position and advice to the DAO is that we should probably do some combination of these things. Like a lot of what you presented is not mutually exclusive, or come up with other ideas. And some of them are relatively low cost, easy to try, like the opt-in for long-term Fox incentives. Some contributors at least posted some interest in that. So some of those are easier than others, but I think in general, we just need to be more fiscally conservative as the market grinds down and make sure that whatever we do, we survive. To me, that's the most important thing. And that may seem painful to some of us in the short term, but it'll be a lot less painful than if we don't take these actions sooner, basically. Like the worst thing we can do, in my opinion, is wait too long to take actions and then put ourselves in a very bad position versus take the actions before we need to and make sure we stay in a good place. And I'm not necessarily recommending any of those specific actions, but I think the more we can do in the short term, the better.
Hey,
Well said.
On that note, I'm curious if there's Kent mentioned one thing he said was about not increasing spending. I'm curious are there any workstream leaders in the audience, or actually anyone just in any of the work streams that has an opinion about what do you think about not increasing the amount that we're spending, like starting with that, then look at other things. But I mean, that's kind of like a baseline. I'm just curious to get an impression from people.
I mean, I'm spending most of the moment as well. Chime in here first. I'm currently under. I never provided a cash flow forecast in the budget, but the total amount the budget was approved for, we're still very much under that. But yeah, I'm absolutely cognizant of that across the board. You know, we should heavily scrutinize any, like Kent was saying, any additional kind of like top line expenditure. Having said, happy to pay for value where we get it. But yeah, we absolutely do have to be like cognizant of the value for money that we are getting for the current spend as well. I'm just very much aware that engineering is the most expensive, and when you're looking to cut costs, you should be looking at the biggest ticket item first. So appreciate you highlighting this, Ken, and at a DAO level, not just engineering, I'm very much concerned with it as well.
Yeah, I'd say before you even like go that route, OX, I think it would be like really good for the community to just like try to maybe see if we can get an opt-in going and see what kind of like budget we can actually cut, USDC wise or stable wise. I think that people will like probably be surprised. I think we could probably get a decent opt-in rate, and it might make a difference. So.
Yeah, I agree, Hunt. I'm really excited to see how much opt-in we can get, and I think it's a great benefit and a great way to stretch our runway without necessarily decreasing productivity. I think DeFi, you said it really well. You know, we need to make sure that we can survive this bear market and make it through to the next bull market. Otherwise, all the work we're doing will go to waste. So, I know we've seen that it's common for, I think, workstream budgets to grow as the DAO as we continue building. So just especially important for all the workstream leaders to be really cognizant of it and do everything they can, across the DAO to minimize spend. Especially because we do have some other things that are kind of like already in motion, like I'm thinking of the Fox chain, how that initial proof of concept is in motion, and I assume there, if that goes well, there'll be a proposal to continue development of that. So there are kind of some other additional budget things that we already kind of have on the roadmap. So all the more reason to minimize spend wherever we can. But if there's other ways that we can increase productivity or keep productivity, sustain productivity without decreasing budgets, or if we can increase our revenues, I know we can't count on that, but certainly if we blow up our revenues and stuff, then we can revisit this whole discussion. So yeah, I think it's up to every workstream leader and every contributor. Really, we all got to band together and do everything we can to survive this bear market and emerge stronger.
Yeah, I would just like to chime in too, and I'm sorry, there's a toddler in the background, so if you hear anything weird. But we've been talking about this on the product side too. We are under budget from our last proposal, which is great, and we've been talking about how do we stay there going forward. And I also really like the Fox Sailor Stream concept, and I'd be curious to see what kind of opt-in we could get for that too.
Yeah, so I think it's worth, the opt-in, I think, has the most general support because it doesn't really, quote unquote, it costs the DAO something in terms of those long-term incentives, but it is, I think, a good potential way to reduce stablecoin spend. It would be worth talking about what that would look like and also what we would need to implement that. I think to implement something like paying contributors X percentage more Fox, we probably need an actual governance proposal to basically make this one of our options. But it does seem like it would have support, and it would be good to figure out what the parameters of that like we have Hedgehit up here, and he actually showed an example of another DAO that was using hedgies for this. So one cool idea would be, basically a contributor could say, okay, this month I'm going to take X percentage in, locked up Fox, which I get a, some sort of bonus percentage. And then that unlocks in X amount of time, whether that's, 6 months or 3 months or a year or whatever the DAO decides. But it would be nice to put some numbers around what that would look like so we could get a sense of that and who'd be interested.
I could add a little there as well, just because we had worked with DAO House and I can share some more articles because they were really thinking about this exact issue to reduce their burn rate by rewarding contributors not just in US or stable coins but also in house token. And they also wanted to use that as a chance to also have long-term alignment, holistically throughout the DAO. And they put up a proposal, and it was an opt-in proposal, like you're all talking about. And they saw, actually, I shared the numbers, but they had a really good response from people who wanted a percentage of their monthly compensation in Locked House. And they used, like, you could get up to 50% of your tokens in-house, but like you weren't fixed at any set amount. And they had everyone opt in for a pretty substantial amount, and I think it was a 1-year lock. And then we came in with them just to execute it, where they just ran a batch mint function to basically send out the Locked House to 17 of the contributors based on how much they each got. But I could talk about that later. But like, I think the most important part is actually looking at like their rationale and the response from their DAO, because it was a pretty good response, and I wouldn't think anything less from ShapeShift.
Headshot, thanks for that context and info on what they're doing over there. Would it be possible, I'm just throwing this idea out there, but like, would it be possible or feasible for ShapeShift to create maybe like 3 different setups where, okay, if you're doing a year-long lockup, you get more Fox. Maybe if some people are more comfortable doing like just a month-long lockup or 2 or 3 months, they would get less Fox, but kind of making it a little bit more customized, creating different products essentially for the contributor.
You could do anything. Yeah, what they did is they basically just did a smart contract interaction directly, and it was essentially loading a CSV file. So you could do the math on an Excel sheet, share that across the DAO, and then just upload that pretty easily. But yeah, if you get there, I think they were thinking in those kind of terms as well. And I'd be happy if you don't know Spencer already, who runs a lot of these thoughts, invite him over if you'd like to talk with him, because I think they really had a lot of big conversations around it. So maybe you could have some shared learning or something as well.
And are they doing this on mainnet or Gnosis chain?
Gnosis, just
cool.
Because it's cheaper.
Which would be a good fit for us to do as a colony.
Yeah, for sure. The other benefit of it too is with the NFTs, someone could hypothetically exit their position of Locked House or Fox without it touching markets. So it's not it's a unique locking mechanism, I guess, which is a small but cool detail.
Yeah, I do think that's a cool advantage of the hedgies over a Sable or Stream, although both might have their place. Is for example, you could do a 6 or 12-month lock on a hedgie, get X bonus, and even better if we could do that in Foxy, which is something we've been talking a little bit about, but I know it's not possible today. But the cool thing about that is that, yes, even though it's locked, the user could still actually sell the NFT at any time if they need the instant liquidity. So they could sell it at a discount or whatever, and someone else might buy it. So it does give them a form of liquidity if they need it, but gives them a benefit if they hold it over the long term. Yeah,
for sure. And regardless if it's hedgy or whatever, I just really I think it's a really important topic, and I love that you're all thinking about it. So I know this is beyond hedgy. I think it's pretty important. So just happy to help if we can, and just be along for the ride.
So we would need to come up with what are the discounts for how long of a holding period, right? That's something that I'm not saying we need to do it right now, or we'd have to either put something like that together and present it to various work streams, or get feedback about what would be acceptable.
Yeah, I think a discussion and getting a sense from the community about what would be supported. I think for something like this, since it's probably something you would want to add, you would probably want to offer standard across work streams or across potential contributors. Would be some sort of governance proposal that just codifies this, basically that says contributors are allowed to, take a 1-month lock for this percentage bonus, 6 months for this percentage, and a year or 2 years for this percentage or whatever, and that just turns into optionality for the contributors every payroll cycle. Assuming it's approved by governance, of course.
Is there anybody out there that does not like this idea, that maybe is feeling incentivizing Fox could have some downsides somehow.
Particularly, I'd love to hear from some of the people in the work streams, some of the people who are currently on the colony payroll and say whether you would be interested in this or not. We've heard from the workstream leaders that there's interest there. How about people who are getting paid every month?
I'm not too sure if anybody's gonna get up and speak on it necessarily now, but I will say that there's definitely interest within marketing and growth. So I think realistically, I do think that we're gonna be surprised with the opt-in rate that we see. I'm pretty hopeful. I think there's probably an algebra that we could find that'll, at least give us like short-term solution before we just start cutting our hands off stuff.
Yeah, and the fact it's voluntary, anybody can choose to maintain the status quo. There's no, we're not forcing anything on anybody potentially by doing this. And as John mentioned, it's worth remembering this would be a matter for the community to decide on via governance. But already I'm getting the sense that there's certainly a lot of support for this idea.
I'd be curious to see how the engineering team would take this, considering that there's already a Fox incentive in place in terms of the existing package for the engineering stream. So engineers already have exposure to the degree of half of their salary in that order to Fox. That may influence for the engineering stream in terms of the take-up rate for this. Though I do like it, I would certainly consider adding an additional percentage into Fox if there was some kind of additional discount or benefit for doing so.
Awesome. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, appreciate the data point.
Why did okay?
That was
Lo-fi girl said she would
I'm
take
like little
100%
early lo-fi.
Fox.
Yeah, I don't see a ton of downside to this in the sense that whatever we discuss here, assuming governance approves it, would hopefully be entirely opt-in. So anyone who's not convinced by this or doesn't want to take it would not have to take that, but it would benefit the entire DAO for more of those that do. So this is, I see this as a relatively low-cost experiment we could do to kind of help the burn rate, or help the monthly spend at least of stables. So I do think that this is worthwhile, at least to try. I don't know, to the earlier point of the discussion, though, that this is necessarily that we should just do this. I'm willing to do this as an experiment, certainly first, and see what happens. But I do think we might need to consider some other things at the same time, just in terms of what I was saying earlier. If I worry about us being slow to the punch, and then the market's really hitting us in the gut because we didn't do things now, 2 months later that we realized we should have done. So I'm personally of the opinion of I would rather see us do a little more than we think is necessary now than too little.
Absolutely agree with that, John.
I would agree with that too, that we need to just stop spending unless it's really something that we need, and also even look at where in the workstream budgets we could lower that budget. Whether we need to do that right now, or I think everyone needs to be prepared. What would you do if the markets continue to drop?
I think one of the things we might consider is trying to set some targets. I know Ken just threw it out there as just a number as an example, right? The 25% reduction in budget, and what that means for a roadmap or a runway rather. and I don't know what that number is, but I think if we just leave it open-ended and don't even have a goal, then it may not. It's a very challenging thing to reduce budget, right? It's very hard for everyone to do that, and if we don't have a goal, I don't think we're gonna be able to very effectively get ourselves there. Even if we don't realize that goal, at least we have like a milepost we're shooting towards.
Yeah, I really like the idea of setting a target that hopefully the community comes together on, of like, let's try to get our spend to X level, and without prescribing, necessarily how we do that. I mean, in a perfect world, what I would love to see, and this wouldn't even require governance, is if, the work stream leaders got together and agreed, yeah, we need to reduce somehow, and basically came up with their own plan that they brought back to the DAO. That would reduce the need for governance, and there could be basically savings that way if we want. I mean, the alternative is that the DAO itself, votes in, we need to have some sort of target or try to get to this somehow, but I don't know. I don't necessarily know the best way to do that, but I do think from a top level perspective, without trying to focus on any particular work stream or trying to say we need to cut X or Y, just having a target to get our expenses down to would be very beneficial for the whole community.
Totally. And another way to look at it too is that it's a great way for work streams to basically minimize their stablecoin budget. So yeah, I think there's a strong incentive for each individual just because you can get that bonus Fox, but there's also this kind of macro incentive that if work streams can provide a lot of value at a low stablecoin budget, there's a much higher likelihood that their future proposals will get approved, especially in a worst case scenario that we're running out of runway and still stuck in the middle of a bear market.
So yeah, I mean, I'm generally seeing support for at least some of this, especially the opt-in stuff in the chat. So I guess what are our next steps to get there? Ken, I kind of see this does seem to fall within tokenomics to me. Would you or maybe want to delegate to someone in tokenomics to basically start working on a plan that could be proposed to governance along those lines?
Yeah. Let's see who might be interested in collaborating on this. This is absolutely tokenomics related. I feel like there's good broad support for it. So maybe starting by figuring out the means by which we might do this, and then thinking about like the numbers, what actually makes sense for discounts. We could also elicit feedback from contributors, with something like this. Maybe actually putting specifics in front of them. Would this, XYZ arrangement be amenable to you? But yeah, that could absolutely be a project falling under tokenomics.
Yeah, my suggestion, and just to make sure we put enough of a sense of urgency on this, is that we should plan, at least on this opt-in. This is not talking to the other measures we might want to take, which should be separate paths. We should try to have something up and passed by governance before the next payroll cycle, so that this is an option for contributors in June. This one's already kind of locked in May, but I think if we could pass something governance, maybe by the end of this month or early June, then that would give the option to contributors in June to take up on this.
Yep. So quickly we can start enjoying some potential stablecoin savings. And that definitely feels realistic, because this isn't like insane, deep tokenomics type stuff. It should be fairly straightforward. So a few weeks deliberating, a few weeks for the governance process. And then the interesting thing to me too is kind of going back to the theme of, looking at various other approaches is, since it sounds like we may move forward with this, it's just part of that bigger tokenomics discussion of what other options do we want to be turning to right now as market conditions continue to look quite bad. And that's a big. I don't think that's something we can dig into. Seriously, we can't figure this out quickly, but it's something we just all need to be deliberating on. Maybe we need another big discussion just like this, talking about some of these other potential options. One other thing I wanted to bring up, Marley. So this is related to the market meltdown, and Marley was wanting to talk about the validator payments. Of course, we like UST is part and parcel of the Cosmos ecosystem and the validator world. UST is having a rough go of it the past few days, and this has implications on our strategy. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Marley.
Cool, yeah. So don't want to spend too much time on this because it'll devolve into a UST party or talking point. Namely, it's like if we continue to use UST as the way to get stables from the validators. And I have some images and links I'm going to post in the stage chat, big wall of text, sorry, and remove the embeds. But this is also, since I've taken these screenshots, UST has continued to do some wonky things in the past like 20 minutes, which is, don't know how to interpret, honestly. But essentially, Osmosis has added USDC through Alexar, as well as just native Atom. So the DAO could hold Atom or Alexar USDC. So it's pretty interesting. And another way to think about it, though, is if we keep doing UST and the belief is the peg will return, it's discounted UST. And so your dollar cost averaging your UST stables down. I'm afraid to look at it again, but it was about, it went from like 90 cents again back down to, what's UST doing today? 69 cents, wonderful. Yeah, 0.7. So yeah, who knows what Friday is going to be? That's like a whole 3 days from now, and this is crypto speed. So yeah, there's nothing, just no real like answer here, but yeah, the pull out what we can. I don't think it's actually doomed. I think, actually, I don't want to give too much analysis, but like, I don't think panicking is the right thing to do. Everyone agrees with that. And like, this has happened with other stable coins. So yeah, that's really all I had to say, I guess.
It is a decent question. I mean, if we truly thought UST was going to zero, we'd want to just cut and run here. But yeah, I'm also of the view that there's a decent chance that it will recover its peg eventually. There's a lot going on here. A lot of like, it looks like, intentional kind of manipulation by some TradFi actors. There's a lot of soap opera shit going on, but we have seen this type of stuff before, and I don't know. I think it's too early to count out Terra, and if it turns out we're wrong, it's not the end of the day the end of the DAO. It's a relatively small part of our exposure, but
yeah, I think that's important perception too. It is a relatively small amount. Yeah. And if anything, it's also a hedge against USDC, and there's additional risk there with Circle and stuff like that. So the conversation came up a few weeks ago. It's like, maybe we should get more UST because it's not USDC. Like,
I'm glad we didn't go that route just yet.
Right?
But yeah, it's good to have diversity with stables. Does anybody else who's steeped in the Cosmos ecosystem have any thoughts on this?
I'd also love to see in this near future, it's really up to the DAO, but just atoms where we're not converting anything, and then the DAO can, like, there's the last screenshot there's liquidity on Uniswap to sell Alexar atoms too, so the DAO could decide to sell when it wanted to, which I think would be more correct in some ways, but stables are great also.
And as a reminder, Marley, the Alexar bridge is the bridge that Osmosis maintains?
I don't think that's 100% accurate. I think Willie, if he's here, he might know better. It's what Osmosis integrated. I think it's its own project.
Yep, that's correct. It's Axelar too. I've been laughing every time you guys
I'm so sorry.
Hey, and by the way, Axelar sent us 20,000 USDC to the DAO Treasury a couple weeks ago. So it's his own project. It's live. It was voted in Osmosis governance as the official canonical bridge for Osmosis. So, and shortly afterwards, we saw Axelar USDC get added to Osmosis. We saw Atoms come over to Ethereum. And right now we got 20K grant to basically build an integration. The first phase of the grant though is just product spec and UI UX. And then if we've been selected as one of 15 teams for this first $20,000 grant, 5 of those 15 teams will be selected at the end of June to receive a $200,000 grant to build the integration, and then 2 of those 5 teams will receive a $500,000 grant. And yeah, looking at their grant program, it seems like we are like the exact type of project that we're looking for. So pretty excited about that. Axelar would enable us to bridge tokens from Ethereum and other chains, other EVM networks, and even other non-EVM networks to Cosmos. They also let you do like arbitrary messages and even transfer a token and include a contract call. So basically, Axelar could enable, like the Sunny from Osmosis described Axelar plus Osmosis as Thorchain, because you could imagine like trading ETH to Bitcoin, and sending ETH on mainnet. It goes through Axelar to Osmosis and executes the swap, and then the Bitcoin is then so you could have like an ETH Bitcoin pool on Osmosis basically, and then let users receive the funds on the main nets. So very cool project. And Sunny from Osmosis said it was his favorite bridge out of between Axelar Osmosis, or Axelar Evmos, and Gravity, the other main bridges that are working right now.
Thanks for the info.
I just started playing with it. Last thought, Axelar, pronunciation. It's pretty neat. It looks like it generates a send me a wallet, kind of like the original ShapeShift. Send me a wallet address, or like you want Atom to go to ETH. Okay, I'm going to generate you an Atom address. You send your Atom into there, and then it pops it off into the ETH land. So it's from that unique address for that transaction. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's great to know that we have some of those other options. I'm personally more of the opinion of like, I'd almost rather just bet on UST recovering its peg and take the extra UST we'll get from taking it, at least for the moment. I think that's a small enough risk that it might actually be worth that bet, but long term, we're gonna have to see what plays out.
Cool. Well, it's 5 o'clock on the dot. Great discussion, guys. It sounds like we have some nice actionable sort of things to do in the wake of this discussion, namely the Fox incentives discussion, which will fall under tokenomics. Lots more to discuss in terms of other positioning we need to take in this market. This of course is relevant to the TMDC, but just tokenomics in general. We will be, continuing to really focus heavily on this every single week as we react to this. So we kind of are getting a sense of how we might position ourselves. In the meantime, these bonds are bringing in some revenue right now, every few days. We have our experiment live on Hedgie. There's a lot of cool things coming down the pike, but yeah. Before we wrap up, does anybody have any of their own parting thoughts here?
Yeah, I got a few things, and actually one cool thing that we can announce on a different note, and we can spend more time on this in maybe in next week's meeting. But the Elastic Swap Foxy pool just went live today. I think just within the last hour. So that's going to start to give us more composability and usefulness for Foxy. And it's also going to provide an opportunity for anyone who's interested that you can actually take your Foxy, which is already earning yield, and LP it with Fox in this pool to earn additional tick rewards. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, super bullish on tick.
And I guess one other thing I'll just say on the general, I think that was just an important announcement to get out there. I'm sure we'll market and talk about that further. But I just want to put a general sentiment of like, sometimes when you're in a bear market and things are looking down, these are hard things to discuss. But this is just part of being in crypto. And ultimately, I'm very confident that we as a community will survive these type of things as long as we take the actions we need to. And that one of the things that I've seen just through many, many cycles in crypto over the last decade is that those, organizations, and DAOs are now very much in this, that take the right actions and find a way to survive, generally do very well into the next cycles. So that's generally my best advice to everyone in this community is band together and survive. If we survive, we're going to be just fine.
Here, we're going to make it. Awesome, guys. Well, never a dull moment. We'll see how things shape up tomorrow. There's